All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to the 11th Annual Growing Online Learning Conference presented by Illinois Community Colleges Online. The theme for this 2019 conference is Accessibility, the Road to Success. We hope that this year's conference will provide strategies and practices for colleges and faculty to use to improve accessibility in online instruction. I'm Tracy Van Proyn. I'm the Director of Online Learning and Instructional Technologies at Heartland Community College in Normal, Illinois, and I'll be the moderator for this session. This session is entitled Mapping Your Success, Universal Design for Learning, and will be presented by Zach Petrea from Heartland Community College, who you see with his lovely headphones on. ILCCO would like to thank College of DuPage for providing web conferencing platform for use in this year's conference. College of DuPage is also an ILCCO member. Our schedule briefly, and I'll show you this, is for the next 3 days is now on the screen. It can also be found at the conference website at ILCCO under resources and events. Links to attend the live sessions will be found in your registration confirmation email and on the conference page. If you have any questions on the registration or accessing the sessions, please contact Jeff Newell. And I think his contact information is here on this next slide. I can't get it to go forward. There we go. So this is Zach's. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the raise your hand icon in the bottom of your screen. Zach will be monitoring that. You can feel free to raise your hand at any time. If you also have any comments, you can put those in the chat room, and I will be monitoring the chat room as well. So with no further ado, Zach, thank you so much for presenting today. Zach is an English professor at Heartland Community College. He's been teaching at the college level for the last 14 years and finds the community college student population to be diverse, motivating, and enjoyably challenging. Zach double majored in psychology and English and focused his graduate work in English before finally coming back around to the psychology side with a certificate in universal design. His current doctoral work is in learning design. In addition to his regular teaching duties at Heartland, Zach helps to lead the Universal Design for Learning Faculty Fellows program there. He serves as a writing program coordinator and also serves as a study abroad coordinator to help maintain his worldwide consciousness. No doubt, however, his home life with his two daughters, ages 5 and 18, teach him more every day than graduate school ever could. So with that, I'll let Zach take it away with his presentation. Thank you again, Zach, for presenting.
All right. Thank you for assisting, and thank you everyone for coming. This is a lot of people, so I'm very flattered that everyone would come. What I want to talk about today is universal design for learning and how it can help our students, whether we are in the classroom or a support service network or in a front staff line job. Universal design is applicable to everyone so that we can help students move through the collegiate life. So I'm going to talk about what these principles are, and there's a little bit of neuroscience foundation that I wanted to bring forward because this is not something that is made up. It has a research component to it, and then give some practical examples and strategies before offering a couple next steps for people. So as I move forward into this, I asked, and this is very new for me, I've never done a webinar before, so I'm having angst. I am not used to talking out into the ether, so please do comment or chat or raise your hand at any point so that we can have a productive dialogue rather than just me staring at a camera for the next 50 minutes. So my first question to people is, have you heard about the multiple intelligences or learning styles or on-course or differentiated instruction? These are lots of different strategies that have come in vogue in the last 10, 15, 20 years in some cases. And so my entire teaching life, I've gone to conferences and I've watched TED Talks and I've been intrigued by all of these different ways of helping students. And honestly, I wish I could say I'm good at all these, and I'm not, because usually what happens is I get really, yes, learning styles, excellent, multiple intelligences, perfect. I get, ooh, grit, Grit is also very good. Perseverance, so the idea that students have to persevere regardless of their natural ability is more important to some. I highly suggest you look into it. There's really good research there. Angela Duckworth is the professor, I think, from Stanford that started that, if you're interested. Um, but what happens is I get really excited by learning something new at a conference or on a TED Talk, and then I come back to my life here in my office and my family and my classes, and then it becomes overwhelming, and then I get kind of sad and depressed that I couldn't do this perfect idea I have, and so then I end up with this TED Talk curse. And so trying to figure out how I can actually plan to integrate new things into my curriculum has been a struggle for my whole time teaching. And this is when I discovered universal design for learning, it helped everything make sense. It has three parts to it. They're just three pieces, three frameworks that anything I do, anything that I make, anything that I ask students to perform, I just ask myself these three questions. Do I give them multiple means of engaging in what I'm asking? Do I give them different ways of representing the content that I want them to know? And am I allowing them to demonstrate their knowledge in different ways? And with this three-part framework, I can very gradually, slowly, in a +1 manner, build my curriculum and my documents and my assessments in a way that is going to benefit the students, and I can integrate new knowledge as it occurs to me. And I find out about it. And so, kind of generally speaking, UDL is three principles for making inclusive and accessible environments. And what it does is it is not a checklist. It is a framework that we can build. And so it's something that we want to use as the foundation for what we're doing as we move forward without telling you what to do and how to do it. So it's called open architecture. And if you use this, then you can actually increase student participation and persistence and satisfaction. And so the research coming out about UDL is very promising for how much it can be helpful. I saw a comment. So Robin said she wanted one thing to note is that learning styles has been debunked, but learning preferences is a better way to frame the concept. And I would echo that. That is fantastic. There is a lot of research about learning styles and how it's mostly a communication preference as opposed to a mode of learning. So she's right on everything. That's good. So thank you for pointing that out, Robin. Universal design for learning came in from the architecture world. And so universal design itself was coined in the early 70s by Ron Mace at North Carolina State. What he did following the ADA in the 1960s is he looked around and saw all of these people with physical disabilities were struggling to get into buildings and to use things. And so he started thinking about how you can design something on the front side that is going to eliminate a barrier before someone encounters it. And at the time, everyone was really big on just retrofitting buildings. But like this picture that you can see here shows, there's stairs and the person in the wheelchair can't get in. And so back then they would just say, oh, okay, well, we'll put in an elevator on the back side of the building. So just go outside and take a left by the dumpster and you can get to your elevator. But that kind of retrofitting is insufficient, and it increases stigma. And so when you are dividing people into categories, it's not something that promotes cohesion or usually feelings of being part of a group. And so he came up with these 7 different design principles for when we make things. And I think I am probably the first generation that, in this picture here on number 1, I never had to open a door in the grocery store. I've always been a automatic opening door. I can't imagine what they did before automatic opening doors, trying to push carts, holding things when I went in with my baby and grocery shopping. And so that's one example of a design principle that was made and created for people with disability, but actually helps everybody involved. Number 6 is probably the most personal here that you can see with the cell phone. My teenage daughter has her flash go off every time someone texts her. My wife has a different ringtone for every single person that calls her, so she knows who's calling even before she picks up and looks at the caller ID. I have my phone set on vibrate 24/7. These are all different ways of getting the same information. And so having something designed universally is not a one size fits all cookie cutter. Instead, it's the opposite, which is it's designed to be used in multiple ways. So as this applies to other things in our environment today, what you can see here is all the stuff that my wife is currently wanting to do to our house, because we bought a house, and of course that means you have to pay more money to fix the house that you bought. But she wants to do this faucet that you can touch it and it turns on. You can grab the handle and move the handle around. You can grab the actual handle and turn it on. You have 5 different ways of turning this water on. So the goal is the same, to get water, but how you get water changes. And the same thing with the adjustable light switch. We have different preferences on light, or I could have put the thermostat here for me and my wife, but that's a sore spot recently with all the weather changes, so I figured I should stay away from that. You also have shelves that can be moved. So these are things that are designed universally for different people to use. I think the most common fun example is closed captioning. And so even though closed captioning was made for people with hearing disabilities, it's actually most commonly used today by couples. And so you have people who are in the same room and they'll have either it muted and the closed caption on when they're sleeping or studying, or you can see it at bars and in the airports. So these are things for one population that help everybody. These kind of solutions respect the diversity of the human condition. And so what you see here is this picture of, I think it's St. Olaf's. It's a hospital in Norway. And I love this because they integrated on the front side, they designed it ahead of time to be usable by as many people as possible. You could start here on the bottom with the stairs and move up into the ramp. You can start on the ramp and then go to the stairs. You can start on the left and go to the right. It's open access. And so this is a really good depiction of open architecture and how you can anticipate a variety of needs up front. Yes, I agree. Thank you, Andrea. There's a bunch of pictures if you do UDL stairs. There's some really amazing designs out there that I wish uh, schools and college campuses, when they're built, would incorporate more of this stuff. So given some examples, I wanted to emphasize that there is a need for this. And so there's 2 prongs to the need. And the first one is literally for the people that need this kind of design. And so people with disabilities are the largest minority population that we have in America. And this slide I borrowed from a colleague at Wabanzi, and it was so good I haven't touched it at all. According to the most recent statistics, about 1 in 5, so just under 20% of the population, has a disability of some kind. Now, if you include temporary disabilities, that number skyrockets even higher. And so a colleague of mine had a broken foot just the other year, and so she was moving around on one of those little trikes, and she discovered how difficult that can be for people in a wheelchair. About 11% of undergraduate students report having a disability. And that's low because not all our students will report. Most of our students are actually unreported disabilities because they come up through K-12 with the IEPs and they get to college and they want to try it themselves. And I applaud them for the effort, but we have to support them and give them the tools to support themselves because they haven't done it before. And we don't want to set them up for failure. The other side of the need is about the mobility, and so the increasing reliance on technology and teaching and basically just the world in general. So about 13% of the US households still today do not have internet. My internet went out last night and my daughter freaked out. It was hilarious. But we're so dependent on it now, it's hard to remember that there are still people that don't. And especially at a community college, a higher proportion of our students don't have internet than at a 4-year university. 20% of adults are smartphone only internet users. And that is not just someone like my grandmother, it is a large portion of people who can't afford also to have internet. And so they become people who use smartphones as their only internet access when they're at home, which is 80% of the users. I was actually on my smartphone while making these slides because I'm that kind of addicted to the internet. If you're a classroom teacher, then I'm sure you've run into this before where 82% of the students actually use a smartphone as they're writing and answering questions and quizzes, and Blackboard and app integration can be very difficult and problematic. Students will spend more time browsing the internet than actually on their desktop. And so as we're creating things and disseminating it to students, we have to be more and more aware of how these documents, how these platforms, how these apps, how these websites actually work in our students' lived lives and in their experience. I was at Target the other day, and so you're going to see down here in the bottom, Target is a big business and they're good at what they do and they want my money. And they have given me like 15 different ways to give them my money right here. I could tap a scan, I could insert, I could swipe. They don't care if I'm using MasterCard or Discover or Samsung Pay or Google Pay. This is a perfectly designed way of getting money regardless of how I want to give them that money. And so the goal hasn't changed, but how they're allowing that to happen has. You also have here, I took a screenshot of my personal cell phone settings, and I bet all 53 of us that are on this right now are going to have completely different settings. And so we have whether you want your phone on vibrate or whether you want it on a ring, and how loud do you want your ring? Do you want the brightness of your screen? Do you want night lights? Do you want auto rotate? These are all things that each one of these was developed independently for a population of people that needed it. But every single one of us benefits from it. And then I reached a sad milestone in my life where we have my Google Home. So yes, Andrea, I wonder how many of these you have in your home, because sad to say, I have 8 of these in my house. My wife has put, no joke, one of these in every single room. So I can just walk through the house and talk to myself and Google talks back. I don't know how good it is for my mental health, but it is amazingly convenient. Yes, Google Assistant is good stuff. So as I continue, all these practical examples, we have to ask ourselves, so does 5 or 6, Andrea? Yes, okay, so we are on the same. 8, oh, it is being taken over. Google is so good, or Alexa. It's so convenient, that's how they get you. So we have to ask ourselves, pedagogically, is it appropriate for us to teach in a one-size-fits-all manner? Because when I started teaching, it was I teach to the middle. And I try to help those on the end, and I try to push the people at the top, but I'm here for the middle. And over time, I realized how much of a bad approach that was. And so I've needed to start breaking out my assignments and assessments to talk about, what do you need? What's the goal of my assignment? Is my class an English composition where I'm teaching them to write a paper? Am I like this professor in this comic saying everyone has to do it this way? Or can I open up the process of writing to accommodate all the different ways of writing, and all I do is grade the writing product at the end? And so a lot of this can be formative changes that we make and summative requirements that we are given. So of course, not everyone can change everything about their summative, but almost all of us can adapt our formative things to assist students as they progress. So universal design, this is based on learning networks. And so this is the neuroscience background, which is why I love these brains. They're so sexy and beautiful. What you have is the 3 frames are based on the idea of, how do we get students engaged? Can we access their limbic systems? Can we allow them to use their executive functioning in the frontal lobe to actually think for themselves on what they're going to do with the information we provide? And then how do we get this information to students that they can then interpret and use themselves? So these are the science basis. And so the next slides will start going into the importance of neurodiversity and neuroplasticity, because even though we have students that might not be physically disabled, we will all be on a spectrum when it comes to these two categories. The first one, the idea of neurodiversity. So you have a definition here, which is its diverse neurological conditions are a result of the human genome. And so anyone that has kids, so I've got two, or if you've had dogs, I have had many dogs in my life, even if they're the same siblings, they're going to be completely different. So on the left here, as an example of this, you have some people can actually see only one of the two images present. Other people can see both. So that's three different ways, because some people only see a man playing a saxophone. Other people only see the woman's face. Other people can see both. And even though the stimulus is the same, how we perceive it varies. And that's the idea of neurodiversity. If that's a little too silly, I put the, you have to have an Einstein quote in every single demonstration, presentation that you do. And so Einstein, according to some recent conjecture, had some learning disabilities. He was a very late talker, and he was really bad with large numbers, which kind of goes back to that apocryphal story about him failing math in 5th grade or whatever. But he was really good about spatial recognition and abstract ideas. And so it's just someone who might be bad at one thing can actually be good at another. And so should we as instructors be trying to figure out what they're good at so we can help them in their way? We think about this in the terms of neurons. And so we have 86 billion neurons in our brain, all of them connected in different ways based on genetics, based on our life experiences. And so it's almost literally this infinite number of connections that can be made. And so it's just, do we make that connection and do we reinforce the connection so that they can access that later? Many times I think my daughter listens to me and then she forgets. And it's the same thing with my students. We have to keep them practicing. Now, each one of us, this brain pattern is different, and it's called a connectome. And if you want to get super sci-fi, there's really cool stuff about this, about how in the future we're not going to have fingerprints anymore. They're going to show us a picture and they're going to map our brain patterns because every single one of us is different. In a practical example of this, you can see 3 people that were put into this MRI machine, and they were all asked to tap their finger and their thumb. That's it. And you can see on these pictures the different kind of brain reactions that they had. And so one person had some pretty decent brain reaction. One person had almost nothing. And then another one, their brain just exploded. But they're all doing the same thing. And especially considering this really silly physical thing, what are they doing in my classroom when I start talking about audience and I start talking about purpose and I do abstract concepts? And so it's just realizing that people are going to be different. And in our classrooms, we have so many different people there. And so their diversity is going to help us if we use it. So again, not doing a single person, but trying to bring in and incorporate everybody. The next concept is about neuroplasticity, which is the idea that our brains will actually change. And so you can actually teach an old dog new tricks. Their brains literally will rewire. And so those neural connections, when they make it, it's a physical distinction and a physical change. So we've seen, I think, especially all of us in education, how much kids change and grow over time. So watching my 18-year-old grow has been crazy. Watching my 5-year-old grow has been crazy. And then I get students that walk into my classroom, and sometimes I find myself kind of sad, or it's like, I just told you this, or why didn't you get this reading? And I have to remember that they're still developing, they're still learning. And so this graphic just shows you some of the drastic changes that occur just over the course of life. And the brain doesn't stop really changing ever. And so when we have students in our classes, we have to remember it's a process. A quick example of this connectome here, just because I love the stuff, is you're going to see there's a difference in reading. And so young readers, when you look at the activity in their brains, is really heavily in the backside, so the visual cortex. And so they're relying very highly on seeing the words, and it's very top level stuff. So they're decoding what those words literally mean. Whereas old readers proficient readers, it shifts. It's no longer the sight recognition that they're going for. They can immediately go to this word form area and start thinking about what the word means in context and all the different kind of variations and shades that words have meanings too. So a lot of times when we talk to students, it's like, well, the answer is right here. Why didn't you read this? They probably did read it, but they were stuck on the decoding level. They weren't into the analytical level yet. So we just have to scaffold them to get there. Last brain image that I'm going to show you is, this is kind of, as people were talking about learning styles, this is kind of where it started a little bit. And so as you are listening to me talk, the auditory network is really going. As you're seeing the words on the page, the visual part is really going. But what's fascinating is if you look at the two images, you can put those together in an overlap, and you're going to see that it's a lot of the same areas. And so if you close your eyes and listen to me, then the visual cortex is still lighting up. When you're reading words on a page, your auditory network is still lighting up. And so the takeaway here is not we need to give visual people visual cues. The takeaway is give people multiple means of information so you can start making those neural connections. And when you connect neurons, you're more likely to have the student learn it and then be able to retrieve it. And so if you want to use the idea of the learning styles in your classroom, don't do it because it's research supported, because it's not. Just do it as a way to think about modes and getting the idea of modes across to people. Did I have them do an activity and tell it to them and have them see it? It's because the more things that they do with it, the more likely they're going to learn it, remember it, retrieve it. And so this is part of the idea that we must always plan activities. We should never give directions. And part of an active room is having both group work and individual work. And again, you're having that student engage with those things in different ways. So you're making connections apart different parts so that they're more likely to remember it because it's a stronger connection. So quickly, just take a pause about halfway through. I've tried to give a little bit of the need in the background and a little bit of why we're talking about universal design and changing curriculum. And so I didn't know if anyone had any quick questions about the stuff we have looked at so far. Just wanted to give a moment to pause. And if there's none, then I will continue talking. Okay. If something strikes you up, please do just use the comment feature or raise your hand. So one of the biggest curriculum design things that has caught on is the idea of backwards design. So you start with a goal that you have at the end of the class, what you want them to do, and then you try to work backwards to plan how you're going to get them there. The problem that frequently occurs with this is that our goals are too complex. And so here I took from our English 101, Comp 1, this outcome. Demonstrate the theoretical and practical understanding of the relationship between audience and purpose and produce texts that address a variety of audiences effectively. And it's like, oh yeah, that is totally written by a teacher. And a student one doesn't know what that means, but even a beginning teacher wouldn't know how to do that. Because when you look at it, especially in a Bloom's kind of way, we're literally doing all of this stuff in one goal. And so it's almost impossible for a student to be taught this if the teacher can't even pull all the different strands apart. And that's where universal design comes in because it allows me to pull this stuff apart on an individual level. So this graphic is not meant to be a slide, and I apologize. This is a bad presentation slide. It's a fantastic handout, so you can get the handout here. And it has 3 different parts to it. So questions to ask yourself as you're designing things. And you can see that each of the 3 have 3 subcategories. And there's questions to ask yourself. Am I doing this? Am I doing this? The answer is going to be completely dependent on you and the class and the goal for that particular lesson. So I'm just going to give some examples. The first one, so how we engage students is we have to give them goals that are relevant and meaningful to their lives. What you see here are several different pictures, and I apologize, I couldn't figure out how to do this one at a time. So this first picture, this massive castle, is something that every time that I design an activity, this is what I expect from my students. I'm like, oh, this is a brilliant activity. They're going to do so well. And then most of the time what I get from a student is this little house right here. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. It's good. It's a good house. You know, it's not what I expected, but it's still in realm of the expectations. Now this picture, so when my daughter was, third grade, they were doing activities at school, and then the parents come in after class and sees this. And this is what we came in to look at. And I just had to stop and, being a parent, I had to say, wow, honey, that's just amazing. What did you make? And her response was, well, the teacher said that I could eat it when I was done. And so this example is where the teacher had an idea about getting a student engaged. I'll give them this goal at the end of eating it. But what that goal actually did was distracted from the lesson completely. And instead, she made a sandwich. And it's a beautiful sandwich. You could pick this up and eat it. And it was so well done. But that wasn't what the teacher wanted. And so we have to remember that the goals are not us goals, it's the student goals. Other example about engagement is dealing with, again, my same daughter, because that's what kids are for, is to use as examples, is when she was learning area. And so when she came home 4th or 5th grade, struggling with area, my wife and I were getting new carpet upstairs. And so just as a brilliant, teacher dad, I said, oh, practical application. So I brought her up and I gave her a tape measure, and I thought this was going to be this amazing learning opportunity. And she rolled her eyes and huffed and puffed and just had a terrible time. And then I had to reflect and, okay, it was a real world example, but what 10-year-old cares about new carpet? And so I had, again, this way that I thought was relevant of reaching her that had no bearing on her real life. And so getting to know our students and what they care about and why they're in our classes and what they're going to do with it, because we can't just use a take your medicine approach to teaching all the time. And after I thought about this event with my daughter, I realized that really what I did with her was no different than my math experience with, SATs and the question about 2 trains leaving from opposite sides of the coast. When are they going to meet in the middle? Like, yeah, it's a practical real world problem. I mean, there's people in Amtrak that have to do that, but no one cares. Why are we learning like that? So to make it meaningful and relevant for our students, we have to make sure that we're trying to use things that are based on current events. And the best case is not for me as a teacher to pick a current event, it's to let the student pick a current event that they can apply to the lesson and the topic at hand. Because we'll have different students choosing different things because they're interested in it. So student choice is just perfect. Even better than student choice of topic is to actually allow them to design their own activities. And so, okay, I need you to do this. That's my goal. What can you do to show me that you understand that? And then have classroom discussions or have groups or have students propose something. One thing that's really fun is to actually give them, here's my standard thing, and here's an option for you. You can propose an option and I'll contemplate it and we can negotiate. But if you give them the choice, you'll actually have some students that take you up on the option. Part of this, though, is this graphic here. So the idea of self-regulation and how students can accurately understand what they're doing. So this student here, he's standing there in clothes that are ill-fitting, saying, I'm going to look good. I'm going to sail through this self-assessment. And he wants to be the head of the internal audit in his future. And obviously, he's nowhere close to doing that. And so we have to be able to teach our students how to be accurate in their own self-regulation and self-assessment. So that means teaching them metacognition. And how we teach students to think about what they're doing is frequent formative assessments, many, many times. And it can't just be chapter questions, unit test, midterm. So just 3 things. It can't just be worksheets. You have to have students continually applying something from class and then being self-conscious about their assessments. And so asking them, how much time did you put into this? What was the grade that you got? What can you do differently next time? And so having students actually write reflections after grades and predictions before grades is a good way to get students involved. And so the pause procedure is one way that you can do that in a classroom. And so after you talk for a while, you can stop, ask the students to reflect on it. And so there's think, pair, share, which is a very common version of this. Another one is to actually have them write down what they have learned or what they're unclear of. So the muddiest point, or a quick write. So you stop and have them, okay, write 2 sentences on this. And then you can collect it all and you can either go through it right there in front of them, or you can take it out of class and look at it. In the next classroom, you can come back in and you can talk about what was confusing to them. Exam wrappers. There's a lot of good research on exam wrappers. And this is the predicting before the grade and then reflecting after the grade. And I promise students always blow this off at the beginning of the semester, but if you're continually doing this throughout the whole semester, they eventually get it. They do better at it. They start recognizing that their choices affect and have a consequence on their performance. So the idea of expression. So how do I, zoning out. Yes, Andrea, thank you so much. So 10 to 15 minutes, she said, is completely accurate. That's everything that I've read has said the same thing. Dr. Medina is really big on this. He has a book called The Brain Rules, and he talks about 15-minute increments, having them reflect and then go back to it. And so you can break up your classroom in multiple time frames. What is expression? So how do I ask students to show what they've learned? And so again, giving them options that they can demonstrate to me. The idea here is to think about the goal. And so oftentimes when we assess students in only one way, like they always write essays, or they always do 2 false Scantron tests, or they always do oral presentations, is we start teaching them how to do the thing, and we're not assessing what we wanted them to learn. So if all I do is Scantron tests, I'm going to learn how to do Scantron tests. That doesn't mean that I learned the content. So think about what we're doing when we assign things. Is our goal to get fit by jogging, by doing this one thing? Or is our goal to allow them to get fit in whatever way that makes sense to them? Maybe they want to play basketball or they want to go swimming. So this is the backwards design. Identify a single goal and then make sure that you remove unnecessary barriers. A good example of this is the Blindside. And so this was an old Sandra Bullock movie. I've seen this so many times. It's embarrassing. But the student was very a subpar writer. And so all the teachers thought he wasn't paying attention and he was lazy because his tests were so bad. And then one teacher decided to just ask him the questions verbally, and he started answering and he was passing all of a sudden. And so this is the idea about whatever you're choosing to use for your assessments, is it necessary or are there other ways of doing it? In the best case scenario, you take a approach of doing multiple ways. So if you ask a true-false question, also ask a short answer question. And what you'll find is students will miss one, but they'll get the other one. Now this can make your tests longer, but that also has the idea of making you forced to reduce the number of questions to only the content that is necessary for your outcomes. And so I never expect my students to understand ethos, pathos, logos after the class. I don't test them on the word, but I ask them, okay, tell me about emotion, tell me about logic. So those are the things they're going to take with them. I'm not going to ask a true false question about pathos, for instance. Another thing to talk about is the formative piece. And so graphic organizers, as a writing teacher, I always did outlines. But I don't want the outline to be a barrier. And so for years I did Roman numeral outlines and students didn't get it. And this was really frustrating because that's how my brain works. I can do, 1A, 1AI, but students couldn't do that. once I flipped to saying this graphic organizer, this bubble chart, everyone started getting it. So it's just the visual representation made it better for them. And also think about like scatter charts, scatter plots, graphic organizers, and our directions that we hand out. And so my assignments used to be paragraphs and bullets. And so this one here about evolutionary process is a good way to have your handouts visually attractive for students that they can start grasping stuff. They can then write notes on it. Yes, I wish I remembered who I stole this from. It was so brilliant I started using it. So best practices for expression. So alternating how we assess students, including as many different ways of assessing students that we can, and then allowing technology into our classrooms. So I allow students to email me work or post it in Blackboard or hand it in hard copy. Like the means of getting the assignment to me are irrelevant to their performance on the assignment. Representation. So the third one deals with how we present the course content to students, and we want to make it as customizable as we can. We could all go through right now, and I could ask you to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each of the different ways of classic education. So lecture is really good for some things and really bad for others. Discussion is good, but also bad. And that's part of representation. So always think about that. Am I doing group work for a reason, or do I just do it because it's convenient? Because there's drawbacks to group work. There's drawbacks to working alone. Another thing to think about is how we are discussing. And so going back to the neuroscience foundation, your brain will literally process concrete representations differently from abstract. And so this was true for me in math, is once you start putting letters in a math equation, it blew my mind. I was like, that's just cheating. It's not fair. But once you started doing concrete representations, so do circles or do oranges, then I could do it. And so you have two formulas here that are the exact same. And some people are never going to get this one with the X, but they'll get it right away with the three dots. And so as we're explaining content to students and these really complicated ideas, we need to be giving both. Abstract, theoretical, ephemeral is fantastic. That's why we're in education. But we have to balance it with concrete real-world examples that we can draw a connection to. Another thing about representation is, again, going back to the design of our assignments. If I give you a 5-page assignment sheet for a 2-page essay, I think there's something wrong. If I'm giving you 1 page that's in 12 or like 6-point font with a 1/4-inch margins, I'm doing something wrong. How it looks can distract from the student's understanding. And this finally dawned on me when I was doing a library research database lesson with my students. I was explaining how you design or how you search in the library databases. And I said, we'll start with a title. If the title sounds interesting, go to the source, the publication. If that looks like what we need, then read the abstract. So I was like, do all of that before you even get the article and read the article. And then I just stopped and I had to think, why don't I do that on my own assignments? And so I started creating assignments that are blocked. So I have summarized the assignment so that they can get a quick take, just like an abstract of an article. And then I give them a graphic, so I'm trying to show them visually a different way of the same content. I can then break off the assignment into really short, discrete steps before it comes over to my much longer description, because I'm a writing teacher, I have to do that. Another thing about representation is the level of difficulty. And so on this assignment, does it matter what text they get the definition from? And so I've given them 2 different articles and 2 different videos, and I don't care what they do because it's going to be the same information. Read whatever is convenient to you and then come back to class and let's talk. So the information, do they have to read this page on this book to get it, or can they go out and find something that's convenient to them? Another thing is the idea of page design and crowding. And so being tax season, I thought this was a good graphic in the background here. I pay someone gladly money to do my taxes because that form is so hard to read. It's written at a 7th grade reading level, but I can't understand it. And I'm a professional. So my students, I have to think like that too. And so when we give them assignments that have multiple columns or really small font, are we making the difficulty level higher than it has to be? And so especially when we give tests like the SATs and ACTs, if it's in multiple columns, students will do worse on those kind of tests. And so the phone here in the middle is showing that students will do better if they can focus and zoom in only on one question at a time. Because what happens is their eyes naturally flitter back and forth between different columns, and then they're going to get distracted and they'll get the answer wrong. And so designing our assignments with Universal Design for Learning is going to help. So this is all about customizing the display of information and how we can scaffold things for students so that they can understand it. The last part that I had wanted to talk about was the idea of understanding, comprehension. And so obviously we want students to understand what we are doing. We need them to learn and struggle on their own. But as the instructor in the class, we have to pace it in a way that helps them do that. And so we have to be able to reference every single thing that we do to a background knowledge that they knew before. So you're building just like a pyramid. And many times I think instructors, including myself, walk in and say, here's this new thing, let's learn about it, without connecting it to what they already know. So we have to have a foundation of background knowledge. We have to highlight patterns over time. And so if we give chapter 1 test and they don't get that information until the end of the semester and the final, they're going to do worse. What we have to do is start linking it together. Here's what we talked about in chapter 1. Here's what we're going to do in chapter 2. Here's what we did in 1 and 2. Here's what we're going to do in 3. And so you're continually revisiting information, which increases their recollection of it. It makes it easier to pull from in their memory. And about 24 hours is what they say for those neuron connections to be made. And so give them a concept, introduce it, come back another day later and do something else with it. And so especially on a 2-day-week class, it's really important that they have Monday, Wednesday with us, but we have to give them something to do on that weekend, because if they don't do anything for 5 days, that sucker's getting lost. So again, just the leapfrogging of information and how it connects together is important. So next steps. I have talked now for 45 minutes, which is something that you never want to do in class. So please, in a metacognition level, take this as a what not to do. Take one assignment that you have and go back in and look at these 3 principles and try to apply one section of this chart. So just ask for, am I giving them options of executive functioning? And then try to add one option in there for them. See how it goes, and then revise it if it doesn't go well. Take one principle and apply it to another one. And so the idea of +1 is a way that I was able to calm down and avoid my TED Talk despair, because it's all great and I wanted to throw everything out and start again, and I had to be realistic and just say, okay, just one thing at a time. +1. Change one thing one time, one thing another time. And so not even all of my classes are UDL based. I'm changing one thing every time I do something. What you have here are 2 links. The cast.org. So these are the foremost UDL experts. They are amazing. They're based in Boston. They were started by a couple neuroscientists at Harvard. So it's the Center for Applied Special Technology. Go to their website. They have one on higher education specifically. UDLcenter.org is related to them, but it's separate, and they have just lots of resources. They have lots of documents. Obviously, I'm talking about this so much, so I love it. So you have my email. So I really do encourage anyone to reach out, and I'll give you anything that you would like. I am going to forward lots of handouts as far as these frameworks go to Tracy and John so that they can get this out so people can use them if they would like. I thank you, Andrea. Enjoy. Have a great day. Was told that I needed to be brief, so I made it 50 minutes. So if there was any questions or anyone has any suggestions, I really want to steal ideas. And so if you do something similar that you heard here, I'd love to see you comment on it so that we could share it to other people. Because with all of us here, all 46 of us, it's a lot of knowledge in the room. I don't know, Tracy, if you could give as an example something that you've done, maybe that would be related but helpful for people.
Sure. So I work with professional development on campus, and Zach's been a part of that. And as we think about professional development, most of the sessions have been face-to-face sessions that we do with faculty, but we're trying to embrace this universal design for learning. We actually put it in some of our vision mission statements on campus, but it's not just the sit and get face-to-face faculty development. We're offering some online, some that's self-paced, some that's hybrid. And again, our goal is that faculty can, again, show what they know in a variety of ways. So some faculty, even in professional development, if it's online, have created screencasts to explain what they've been doing. Some have created, similar to what Zach had shown with his assignment, excuse me, they've created almost like infographics to explain what they gathered from the information. And other people had created tech fakes, right? So they wrote the information out. But it's interesting that when faculty have put all those together, for instance, in a discussion board, the knowledge that they can gain is far greater than they understood by themselves through one modality, through one representation of what they understood. So it's just amazing to see when you can combine those things. Zach talked about putting a +1 for individual students, but when you can get that combined knowledge, it's amazing to see what can be produced. So.
Agreed. Thank you. Another thing, when Tracy mentioned screencasts, as a writing teacher, I've always struggled with writing comments on essays and students going away and then coming back saying, I forgot what this meant. And so I have started giving all of my comments in a screencast. And so I will type or I'll record myself talking through their paper. So they have that so that they can pause it. They can go back to it later. So it's just a way of recording something for future use, just like we're doing in the webinar. So please, if anyone else has any ideas or suggestions, this is a good time, or questions that we can talk about. Let's see, Robin is typing, so I want to give her a second. So Robin says, I'm an instructional design grad, undergrad, online hybrid courses, also for faculty professional development. I use backwards design and weave UDL into everything I do, so yay, congrats. My particular focus is helping faculty with digital pedagogy. Oh, geez, the right ed tech tool. So you have the same, sounds like the same job that Tracy has. So thank goodness for both of you and Tracy, because faculty, we couldn't do any of this without your support. So thank you to you both. All right.
Anyone else have any other comments or further questions to ask Zach?
I love seeing that someone's typing. I get so like nervous. It's exciting. Oh, who's gonna say it? Ah, thank you, Susan, for coming. Thank you, Joyce. Have a good day.
We can all give Zach a round of applause, maybe with the emoji in your chat room. Thanks, Zach, for this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Just a reminder, Zach, I don't know if you have the next slide with the schedule up.
Yes, I can get that up. Oh, I think we're both fussing at the same time.
Okay, go ahead, Zach. Just a reminder that our next session is tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the session Simple Solutions, Accessibility for Audio and Video Resources. It's presented by Robin Fish from Sauk Valley Community College and Lori Went from Parkland. Links to attend the live sessions are going to be found in your registration confirmation email. And if you have any questions on the registration or accessing the sessions, please contact Jeff Newell. His contact information is here. Archives of these presentations will be available at the conference site on ilco.net following the conference. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Zach, again for your presentation. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.